the most important tool to remake Nigeria in any way, economically, politically, whatever way you see it, is solely dependent on the quality of basic education for all Nigerians. Because that is the stage where we are armed with the values, the mindset, we've had the definition here, the thinking, we've had another girl suggesting, the patriotism, the ability to harness our immediate environment and to access the secondary environment, and which the two will make us the useful citizens that will build the country. And if we are to in any way improve Nigeria, it means we have to look back at the foundation and make it solid for the building of the nation. And the foundation actually is the basic education. If at all, education is at the center of development. Now, we all know how our basic education looks like. I won't delve into that because I don't have that much time. But across the country, the story is the same. Common Nigerians no longer have access to quality basic education. Most of our kids are on the floor, on the ground, under the shade of trees, called school. And worse to that, in every 1 out of 5 out of school children in the world, one of them lives in Nigeria.
It's also an honor for me because today is the day and the birthday of one of my big heroes, Professor Wole. And that we're doing the celebration under the auspices of the Wole Soyinka Center, which was created by one of my closest friends, the journalist Abiodun, and so many people that I love and respect, like Professor Shikoni, and so many people. And I'm happy to see all of you in the hall. I wish I could be with you. Unfortunately, I come home in 2 weeks after this program would have taken place. So I just want to quickly go to my remarks so I don't waste your time. You know, and to give you the context of my remarks, I travel around Africa a lot. In May, I was in Mali to receive an award. And as I flew out of Mali, there was a coup d'etat in Mali. It was incredible. And I think it was about 18 months ago now, I was in South Africa for a conference. And as we landed at the conference in Cape Town, there was a huge, massive protest like what is happening now, because a young girl had been raped when she went to the post office and killed by one of the postmen there. So, you know, I've been traveling around Africa and working on Africa because of my job with women in Africa, because we actually have ambassadors in about 48 countries, and we're active in all 54 African countries. So and I think, you know, the question that we're asking that about Nigeria and Nigeria not working for Nigerians, I think it would be important to pay attention to more data points which show that we can actually ask the question, is Africa even working for Africans in general? And if we ask that question, then we see that, you know, a lot of the solutions that we come up with in Nigeria may not be sufficient. So I want to offer additional solutions to the general conversation that we can keep in mind when we are defining our strategies to go forward. So I have a 3-step program for reclaiming the quest for a prosperous country. And the first step is to identify the source of the problem. The second is to understand how the system is currently working. And the third is to create an alternative. So if we look at the first step. You see, I have a drawing here, and in this drawing, you see in the downstream, you have, usually when they show this drawing, they show children drowning in the water, in the downstream, and people are jumping in to rescue the children. And I think because it's such an emergency, it makes sense that we should focus on where the children are drowning. But whenever the story of children drowning is told, they say that then somebody runs upstream. You see that person running upstream. And others are saying, come and help us to save these drowning children. And the person says, no, I have to run upstream to see how the children are getting into the water in the first place. Because really the real problem, the source of the problem is upstream. And what we're trying to tackle is downstream. So I find when we discuss Nigeria, we spend so much time on the politicians, on the leadership problem, on this, on different emergency, urgent issues, but we're making the assumption that if we solve that problem, or that that's the origin of the problem that we have. And my position is that it's not. So when I look for the source of the problem, I think the source of our problems, not just in Nigeria, but across the continent, is an extractive system. It's an extractive global system, not just affecting us in Nigeria, but it affects pretty much every African country.
I apologize that I had to come in a bit late. You can see from my attire, I'm coming from court, where I had to appear in the matter that I challenged the imposition of fines on broadcast stations in Nigeria for so-called hate speech, which came up today for hearing, and judgment has now been fixed for the 8th of October 2021. I am privileged to be seated here. I can see my mentor, Femi Falana, is there. Some people say I speak like him. I don't know whether it is true or not. I have since adopted him as my father, whether he agrees or not. Now, speaking about rule of law, for me, Nigeria is at a very difficult period. By my collection, and I speak in the language of my generation, I have never seen a regime, I have never seen a time in our national history where the fundamentals of nationhood, where what keeps a nation and what keeps the soul of a nation alive, has ever been challenged more than this period. Now, rule of law simplified is basically a theory which was popularized in the 19th century by Professor Abiodun, a British and English jurist. And of course, there are various components to the rule of law. But primarily, the rule of law must be anchored on respect for human rights, equality before the law, and supremacy of the law. Now, these three key elements, three fundamental ingredients of the rule of law, have been totally annihilated under the current regime. And for me, it will only beg the question, if we speak to these issues without giving a human face to them. So if we have to mention names, we must mention names. For me, what is more tragic about the assault on the rule of law under the Buhari regime, whether in terms of the flagrant disobedience to court orders, the reckless violation of the rights of Nigerians on a daily basis, the intrusion, the audacious intrusion into our civic space, the continuous and sustained attack on free press. It is most shameful that this is coming under a government that pretends to be progressive, under a party that promised Nigerians change. But I think we must have misunderstood the message. Things can change positively or negatively. So it does appear that Nigerians did not read correctly the change that this regime talked about. But times are still proven that we must, as a people, take actions to salvage our country. I'm not very optimistic because the signs are very, very troubling. Today, in Lagos State, where all of us are seated, and I want to give specific examples, and I said, within the few minutes I have, I want to put human face to these issues. You have a commissioner of police who will go publicly to say nobody can protest. That is not a democracy. That is not a democracy. You have a situation where people are being arrested, thrown into detention for demanding or exercising their right to self-determination, whether you agree with them or not. You have a situation where obnoxious legislative proposals are being introduced in our National Assembly to stifle the press. Whereas the killings besetting our nation, from the killings, the genocide that is going on, are not being attended to. The economy is collapsing, but the rule of law is under assault. Things has never been this bad. You can prove me wrong. As I said, I'm speaking the language of my generation. That we now live in a time where people will openly tell you go to court. And you know, when they tell you go to court, they are telling you the court is inconsequential. They are taunting us, go to court. Because you have a state security service that pretends to be a law enforcement agency that has become an agent of executive impunity, disregarding whether for release of criminal suspects, detaining people without giving the right of access to legal representation, that we even have courts of law being invaded. That is not a democracy. That you have the National Assembly being invaded, nobody has been fired, nobody has been punished, under a government that promised us change. So here is the point. The battle to salvage our country, the battle to rescue or revive the soul of our nation, lies squarely with the Nigerian people. Because the National Assembly has become a national embarrassment. We cannot depend on the parliament. When the Senate President Abiodun goes on public record to say, I would rather please the President than please Nigerians. And as you are aware, Buhari nominated Loretta Anoche to go to, even though her nomination has been rejected. But the fact that her name was mentioned in the parliament of the Nigerian people to be part of an electoral umpire, someone who has publicly expressed her partisanship, it shows you the context that the current regime has for the Nigerian people. And we shouldn't pretend about these things. We shouldn't be diplomatic about it, because those who are oppressing us, they are not diplomatic. So we must speak to them in the language that they understand, and Buhari himself said. So Nigerians, and as I round, must take up the fight. Either through public interest litigation, and I'm happy our leader is here. If they pick me up after now, I know he will come. Either through public interest litigation, we must continue to challenge executive impunity. And I'm also saying kudos to the Nigerian press for the solidarity we saw, I think yesterday. That is the language that we need to understand. There should never be a time where the civil society, the democratic forces must come together to salvage our country than now. So the civil society must continue either to protest, to engage. We must do all that is necessary to salvage our country. I celebrate Professor Wole Soyinka. I thank him for his contributions to our nation. And I want to finally say that I feel scandalized when I see young people on social media saying, Professor Soyinka has not spoken. At 87, he has done his best. The battle has been shifted. So the young people must take up the fight to rescue our country. Thank you.
Going back to the conversation about the cracks within, when I was asked to talk about, write about this topic, I looked at the coat of arms, I looked at the Nigerian pledge, I looked at the Nigerian national anthem. I saw a thread that cuts across the three, and they were all harping on peace and unity. I was wondering whether that was a coincidence or something triggered that fixation on peace and unity. I went back a bit to the previous national anthem, the one that they called Nigeria Will Hail Thee. And that one too was talking about peace and unity. I didn't meet, I'm in my very early 40s. I never met that anthem. I never heard where it was. I read about it just like everybody. So I began to reflect on the wordings of that anthem, and I was asking myself, does it mean that in the past 40 years, Nigeria was also talking about peace and unity? Post 40 years, we're still having on peace and unity. I tried to think, I was checking, I said, let me check other countries' national anthems. Maybe it's the style of nations, particularly multicultural and heterogeneous societies to have on peace and unity. I went to the American national anthem, and they were talking about bonds and home of the brave. It was just talking about bravery. So what it meant was that the anthem reflects the aspirations of the people. While America was talking about bravery and being victorious in wars, Nigeria was happy on peace and unity. So it made me to go back to understand what exactly is responsible for the cracks in Nigeria's peace and unity. I found two major things. One is the excessive focus on oil. The excessive focus on natural resources, especially petroleum, crude oil. How is that excessive focus causing the problem? First and foremost, we are operating a structure that guarantees free flow of cash from the center to the states. So every month, the states go with their begging plates, go to the center, collect some money, regardless of what they contribute. Even if they sleep all through the 30 days, at the end of 30 days, they go to Abuja, they get cash in return. So what does that do? It creates a competition among states for the center's attention. Those getting the most significant attention are fiercely pitted against those that are getting the least attention from the state, from the center. Then there is another problem, which is aggravating the resource conundrum, which is the kind of laws that we have that has cornered all opportunities of wealth creation and pushed them into the exclusive legislative list. Aviation, seas, ocean, banking, those major areas and resources that states could have used to generate wealth, they pushed it into the exclusive legislative and made the federal government the ultimate controller of the revenues coming from that. You know what it did? It destroyed the imaginative and entrepreneurial capacity of states to look for other means of creating wealth. Then there is a third war. They created even additional legislations like the Land Use Act and the Petroleum Act. What it now did is to vest every land, every mineral resources, and even told the past of how many nautical miles beyond the beach that belongs to the federal government, and they codified it into laws. That again puts all of the resources in the state, and with a unitary system of government, states have been turned to beggars. At every point in time, there are conflicts and tensions about natural resources. Whether it is in the southwest, southeast, south, in the northeast is even worse. Everybody is clamoring for something, there are agitations. Underneath those agitations, everybody wants a better share of natural resources. So how do you unseat the pain and the tension? How do you recover? How do you remake Nigeria in a country where the fundamentals are flawed? For the purposes of the student, let me explain what I mean. What I mean is that You have malaria. Your room has a window that is broken. The net is torn. Mosquitoes come in every night and feast on you and give you malaria. Your parents know that the window is open and broken. They went to AstraZeneca, GSK, SmithKline, all the pharmaceutical companies and told them to give them the best anti-malaria. So every day they give you anti-malaria, the window is open. The net is open. So you keep taking anti-malaria, you get well, 2 days, you go back, malaria comes back. Will you ever get well? No. That is the kind of blueprint Nigeria has always. We've had lots of solutions, but none of them made any attempt to go to the fundamentals. So how do you address it? You need to start, whether you call it restructuring, whether you call it federalism, whatever name you want, whether you call it regional autonomy, what it means is that all of those mechanisms, legislations that have made the center the ultimate and sole controller of national resources need to be dismantled. Let me give you my idea of what the second solution would look like. The second solution, it goes back a bit to what the first speaker said, which is on the focus on education. But let me give you some evidence. I found an article written by Thomas Friedman. It was talking about the link between oil and education. So OECD, that article is called Pass the Books. Keep the oil, pass the books. So the OECD, they introduced what they call the PISA exam. The PISA means Program for International Student Assessment. What it does is that it tests the capacity of 15-year-olds in the participating country, their capacity to know maths, science, and reading comprehension. So every 2 years they conduct the test. They will conduct the test in countries with the highest natural oil rent. They will conduct the country in the countries with the lowest or no oil rent at all. Let me give you some of the results. They found out that students from Singapore, Finland, South Korea, Hong Kong, Japan, they stand out as having the highest PISA scores. They have few or no natural resources at all. Now another example is a country like Taiwan. They only mine the talent of 23 million citizens. Talent, they have nothing at all. They say it's just like on a barren island. Again, they went to the Middle East. In the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Oman, Algeria, Bahrain, Iran, and Syria. High oil rents. Do you know what the scores said? They went to another region to check. They went to Latin America. They checked countries like Brazil, Mexico, and Argentina. They went like this. They went to some European countries. They went to the Middle East, the countries in the Middle East that didn't have oil, like Jordan, Turkey, and that went up. So they began to realize that there is a negative relationship between oil wealth and education. They didn't test Africa. You know the result? If they had tested Africa, this year's JAM alone is enough indicator of what the results will look like. So that is to tell you that as long as our educational institutions are neglected, Nigeria will never get it right. That is why I agree with Effion. Effion and I went to UNU. We are both, we are very proud each time I come across Effion because UNU gave us one of the best standards of education. I don't know what it is like now. I don't even know whether I want my children to go to it. But why I'm talking to the young people now is that an average middle-class family in Nigeria, their children are all studying abroad. So if all of you fail JAM, they don't care because their children are abroad. So that is why every student, the younger generation, everybody will begin to join the clamor. All the money you are spending or saving on subsidies, you are subsidizing subsidized education. Make education the highest. All our budgetary allocations, the highest should go to the educational sector. You should make sure, you should demand that the same standards that their children are getting over there is the same standard that you are also getting here. That is the only way Nigeria can make a state from poverty. Thank you.
Like everyone here, I believe that we are in dire times and that this decade will be a defining decade for this country. And it's only sincere conversations like this that can actually give us an opportunity to salvage that situation. Now, if we want to talk about remaking Nigeria to be a secure and viable union, it will be undoubtedly impossible for us to have that conversation without having a conversation about our relationship with crude oil. Because whether we like it or not, in the room that is called Nigeria, crude oil is the elephant. Whether you like it or not. Crude oil is the economic mainstay of this country, and arguably the political lifeline of this country for at least 50 years of the over 60 years of its independent history. Crude oil is what has made us, and crude oil is presently what mars us. Now, if you're talking about crude oil, what first comes to mind? The Niger Delta region. That's where I'm from. On no place on this planet Earth is the negative externalities of oil exploration more visible than in the Niger Delta region, where our environment has been near completely devastated. As I speak to you, over 13 million barrels of oil have been spilled into our environment, and it continues to be spilled yearly. Billions of cubic feet of gas is flared yearly into the Niger Delta environment. What is the effect of this on communities? You have fishing and farming communities which entire economies are built around farming and fishing. You have lands that have been so degraded that the agricultural output is low or contaminated. You have our rivers that are basically unfishable. How have we responded to this issue that has come about because we have decided to build an economic system that revolves around monthly meetings where commissioners of finance go to Abuja and get allocation from crude oil? How have we managed this system? We have failed to manage it perfectly. I'll give you an example. For the over 6 decades that we've been mining for oil in Nigeria, we have not taught it smart to audit the Niger Delta environment. Do any of you care what we go through in the Niger Delta? It shows. It shows from the actions of the government that nobody cares. The only report we can point to today and say, okay, this is a report of or this is the Niger Delta, is a unique report on the Goni land. That report studied barely 120 kilometers pipeline rights of way. There are over 110,000 kilometers pipeline rights of way in the Niger Delta. What did that report say? It, amongst other things, noted that our groundwater is completely polluted with benzene 900 times above the WHO level. Benzene is a carcinogen. You are basically drinking cancer. The report went on to add that it's going to take at least 3 decades, 30 years, for the Ogonian environment to return to its natural state. We can extrapolate from that to get an idea of what we are going to see if we are to actually have an audit of the entire Niger Delta environment. We have built an economic system where, apart from the whole state, Lagos, no other state in this country can boast of being able to economically sustain its people without crude rents. None. Not even the Nigerian government. By focusing on a system that is based on just extracting natural resources, extracting crude, not only have we devastated our environment, we have stifled private enterprise. We have disincentivized production innovation. Recently, I saw in the news that the Katsina State Governor was proposing to turn viewing centers to Islamic schools. Katsina. Why do we think that idea was brought up in the first place? Our state governors, they have not been put in a system that encourages them to think. So there is no economic, you can't see any economic implication for that. Because whether or not we like it or not, at the end of the month, like Madam Victoria said, it's going to get to Abuja and it's going to get allocation. And they can decide to marry off, pay dowry for everybody in Katsina State, if that's what he wants to do. This system is not sustainable. Whether we like it or not, systems that are built solely on the plundering of natural resources, which we know is not it doesn't restore or it doesn't grow over time. It takes time for that to happen. It means that the system will collapse in due time. Going back to the Niger Delta, in April 2020, Dr. Efe Snachi of the Stable Seas and Aqualix did the research on the Gulf of Guinea, on the insecurity there, and they were able to find, let me know it's about find, something we already knew from time. They were able to put it in the public, the link between the environmental degradation in the Niger Delta, poverty of the people, and the increasing piracy and armed robbery in the Gulf of Guinea. Today, the Gulf of Guinea is the least secure waterway in the world, hindering economic activity along the entire coast of West Africa. Why is that? Because we are focused on building a system revolved around oil. So that Nigeria can fund this budget and the ostentatious lifestyle of the political elites. Again, I would like to emphasize, that system is not sustainable. What do you have as a result in Niger Delta? You have urban and rural, rural to urban migration. Does it surprise us that if you look at the top 15 states with the highest unemployment rate, Niger Delta states are topping? It doesn't make economic sense, it doesn't. The people whose back this country has been built on are having this much challenges both environmentally and economically. We are supposed to have learned from this, right? We are supposed to have learned from this. We've mined oil for over 60 years. We are supposed to have learned. What have we learned? Absolutely nothing. Let's take the petroleum industry bill, for example, that the National Assembly just passed. Personally, I'm against it completely. Because the first line of that document says all natural resources belongs to the federal government. I'm not cool with that. My people back home are not cool with that. They want resource control. Now going back to that bill, if you look at that bill from the point of view of the Niger Delta, the injustice is glaring. There's no argument there. If you look at it from the environmental point of view, you can see that the disregard for the environment is also clearly visible. Now, economically, if you look at that bill, the lack of foresight is astounding. Take, for example, the provision for 30% of NNPC profits to be sent to frontier business for further oil exploration. I was reading on Premium Times where Mohamed Sabo, who was one of the people that engineered that, was giving his reasons for diverting 30% of NNPC profits to search for more crude. He said that the reason they were doing that was because the world was gradually moving away from crude oil, and they are no longer interested in funding crude oil. So it is better for us to now use the resources we are getting now from crude oil to search for more crude oil. Why was that the first thought? We have created a system that entrenches economic mediocrity. Mediocrity in economic governance. that the only thing the politicians, the political class can think of is more crude oil. They don't know how to produce. They don't know how to encourage production. And we have simply built and codified laws around all this. There's something that the political economist Frederick Bastiat said. He said that when plundering has become a way of life for a group of men living together in a society, over time they create for themselves the legal code that justifies it and the moral code that authorizes it. Today, every law in this country was put there having crude oil in mind. I'm not joking. Every single legislation, as from 1970 when the war ended, every legislation, most majority of the legislations that have been passed because of crude oil. One more thing we must understand as we are focusing on this. If we don't address it, there will be a problem in the not so distant future. Why do I say that? How much longer do we feel that the Niger Delta people are going to continue to bend their backs to carry the economic burden of this country, considering that we've benefited absolutely nothing but a devastated environment? How much longer? 2 years? 3? 4? I can tell you for sure that it's very short. It is very, very short. When I talk about environment, it abstracts it. It completely abstracts it. I don't know how many persons here are from oil producing areas. I know my brother here is from one. But it abstracts it. These are communities inhabited by individuals. Goi community in Ogoni, I'm from Ogoni, was completely sacked. Completely. Because of oil exploration. Today, they are internally displaced persons in their own land.
Nobody?
Yeah?
Time.
The truth is, as we have this conversation today, these are some of the points I want us to pay attention to and address. Because the chances of us having this opportunity to continue to share these ideas are slim. We must take this into consideration and ensure that we have a robust conversation.
Happy birthday to Prof. It's an honor to have been in charge of an organization that is named after somebody that has been so consistent in character and in integrity in a society where integrity is scarce. So happy birthday to Prof. So talking about the media that a new Nigeria needs. First to re-echo the importance of everything that we're saying here. So this is the lecture where we put everything on the table. Normally we'll pick one issue because it was really difficult to think of one issue, and also because, of course, the book Remaking Nigeria speaks very importantly to all of those issues. I am not one of the contributors to the book, so I consider it a privilege to also be here speaking about the book. So the importance of the media, we all know, inform us, to educate us, to entertain us. But I believe that all of these should gear towards ensuring that we have true citizens, people who understand the reason that they are in the polity and the role that they play and their power, and which goes to what the Constitution gives the media the power to do. Section 22 that we always quote says that the press, radio, television, and other agencies of the mass media shall at all times be free to hold the fundamental objectives contained in this chapter and uphold the responsibility of the government to the people. So the government is responsible to the people, and the press is there to ensure that the government is accountable. And so when you talk about that, and you put it against the fact that in 2011, May 28, the Freedom of Information Act was passed in Nigeria, And then years after, we're talking about the amendment, to the National Broadcasting Act. Years after that, we are talking about the Cyber Crimes Act. Years after that, we're talking about the amendment to the National Press Council Act. It looks like we're going backward rather than moving forward after the Freedom of Information Act gave us such power. It is important for us to understand what we are dealing with here. So I have a publication here. WSCIG and the Goethe Institute supported cartoonists to do this publication, and it is titled Drawing the Line for Free Speech. And one of the cartoons there interests me. It was contributed by somebody called Murak Oguntade, and it's a conversation between, well, an image that looks very much like our president, but we cannot say because it's a satire. So, but it looks very much like the president, and he's at a restaurant. And at that restaurant, the waiter goes to him and he says, "Can I call you Mr. President?" And then he answers, "Feel free." And then the waiter says, "How would you like your coffee?" The person who looks very much like the president says sugar free. And then the waiter said, "How would you like your egg?" And he says yolk free. And finally the waiter asks, "How would you like your press?" And he says speech free. So what we're dealing with here is a government that is openly attacking the freedom of speech. And we need to say it as what it is. So this current government, the president is its 6th year. There have been, I believe, 3 media chats, many press conferences, and many press statements, no press conference. What does that mean? It means that we have not had any avenue to ask our president questions. He has just told us things that he wants to tell us, and we have to deal with them, go figure them out, go search them out. But he does not sit down for Nigerians to ask him, "Mr. President, can you answer us about the issue?" We have to send his aides to him, and sometimes we have to choreograph, chats for him to speak in public. So we're dealing with a government that has decided not to be accountable to the people. But it is the duty of the media to hold government accountable. And, it's a duty that we have to do. It's not an option. It's something that we must do. So how does the media need to behave, and what kind of media do we need when we're dealing with such a situation like the one that we have? Number one is that we need to assert our independence as the media. And yesterday was one of my own happiest days as someone. I've been looking forward to a day when things like this will return. When media houses will come together and use our front page, not just for advertisement, not just to show faces of politicians, but to make a statement about our rights to freedom of speech. To make a statement about the rights of the people to know. And I'm happy that, the Nigerian Guild of Editors, beyond, we're waking up from just, organizing awards for people who are in political offices to remember that we have powers that we're not wielding. The front page of the papers, growing up, I used to believe that it was sacred, that the things that show on it have to do with things that have to move the country forward. And yesterday was the day to remind ourselves that yes, we can make a statement and move our country forward. So the media needs to assert and continue to assert its independence as the media. Also, we assert our independence by being sustainable. Now, COVID told us that the media in Nigeria is not sustainable as it is presently designed. So many layoffs, media houses were shaking. Some media houses are yet to recover. They are still publishing 32 rather than 48 pages. So how do we deal? We do need to sit down as the media. And I always say, as somebody who organizes a lot of meetings for the media, that the media always hijacks other people's meetings to talk about its problems. The media does need to fix a meeting that is solely about discussing its own problems and finding solutions to it, rather than take opportunities of other people's meetings and then we talk about the fact that we have not been paid salaries, don't you know that press paper has become very expensive? We do need to have meetings that are dedicated to discussing our own problems, because we need to be sustainable. We need to be able to pay our bills so that we do not have to go cap in hand to politicians, so that we can actually speak. Then we do need to be more professional in the work that we're doing. We need to stick to our profession. But while we're doing that on sustainability, we need to be upfront about, the fact that we are a business as well as a social service. I see that a lot of times media wants to hide, to say that it's a business. It's a business. And so it's okay to have adverts. Just don't put up, adverts as news to the audience. Write on it, it is paid for, so that the people understand the content that they are reading. But it is important for the media to be able to charge and to be able to be paid for the services that it renders. It is important for the Nigerian journalists to be able to walk into a room and sit side by side the governor and not need to, kowtow and just retreat what the person is saying, because the person has been robbed of his or her dignity. So these are some of the things. One of the very important things I think that the new media needs to do is to decentralize. How do I mean decentralized? Most of the major publications and most of the major televisions and radio are focused on the federal government. Now, what would it look like if we had a Punch newspaper that was focused just on Ogun State, for instance? It has its national arm, but it has one arm that is focused just on that government, because the governors are getting away with murder. They're getting away with murder because Nigerians do not quite understand what federalism is. And so we just report everything and say everything is happening at the center, and it is the center that is responsible. The media needs to turn the heat on the units. If we have a daily trust that is focused on Kwara, a Premium Times ham that is focused on Anambra, the governors are going to feel the heat and things will be happening. Everyone who has spoken here has talked about community. We do need to take media closer to the people so that the people know what is happening. And I've done a lot of studies on Nigerian media and the way it is constituted. In states, the government owns the media. More than happens in the federal, because privatization is clear in the federal. So in states, the state government wields whatever happens on radio and television. There are not so many private stations in the units. So we do need to have private stations move to the unit and turn up the heat on the governors and the local government that is almost non-existent at the moment. Finally, I would say two things, no three. One is that we need to self-reflect as media. We need time to read our own stories, look at our own trajectory, and learn from what we do need to change. Of course, we need to collaborate, and what happened yesterday is a huge collaboration. Huge collaboration. And it tells us, somebody heard what we said yesterday clearly. It was clear. And we need to collaborate more to say clear things. Lastly, we need to use technology as a tool for truth telling. How many editors are active online? How many editors? We say we treat online like it's something that we cannot touch, something that came to take our jobs. But we need to treat it as a tool for truth telling. Because the power of clicks is that we can go further online. So we need the people who know the truth to speak online and to speak to the truth. Thank you.
What we have observed in the last 6 years of the Buhari regime is that there have been a consistent and deliberate assault on the rule of law, from the continued violation of the rights of Nigerians, the total disrespect for court orders, and of course the complete disregard for law itself. The Buhari regime has shown itself incapable of abiding by the rule of law. They have also shown Nigerians that really it is not a government that has interest in upholding the tenets of democracy. And the examples are so many. The examples are so many. For me as a lawyer, even to practice law in Nigeria is frustrating, because you get to court orders, those orders are not respected. We have even seen courts of law being invaded. under a democracy without consequences. The president wakes up, says whatever he likes. He doesn't even talk to Nigerians. That is not how to run a democracy. You cannot have a representative democracy and the representatives are not talking to those they are representing. Why is it so difficult for this president to answer questions, for this president to be made to account for his leadership? Why is it so difficult to hold the executive accountable? So that is the point. That is the point. The daily all that we see are people pretending to be spokesperson of the president. Today, Femi Adesina is saying something else. Tomorrow, Gabashan is saying another thing. And you see this content, the dissonance, the contradiction. Whereas the person that was given the mandate to lead the country is hiding in the villa. He has insulated himself from the citizens. And at the same time, people are being arrested for protesting. People are being attacked for expressing themselves. That is not a democracy, which is why I said that this regime has declared war on the rule of law. And that is very clear. It is so clear. There is a sustained war on the rule of law by the Buhari regime. All democratic institutions have been bastardized. The law enforcement agencies have been politicized. They have been bastardized. From the police to the SSS, all of them have been bastardized. The National Assembly has been destroyed. The judiciary is struggling to survive. The press is coming under consistent attack. Civic space is shrinking. Citizens are no longer allowed to even come out to protest. The unity fountain has been sealed off. That is not a democracy. This is a dictatorship. And the evidence is overwhelming. Undisputedly, the evidence is overwhelming. And that is why I am saying that Nigerians must hold this government, this regime accountable. Nigerians must continue to protest. Because as I said, when they say protest doesn't change anything, the solution is no protest. Because that is the only language that they understand. Resistance is the only language that Taiwan understands. Which is why citizens must consistently continue to protest. That is my position.
Say Nigerians will stand to challenge executive impunity.
Yes.
When should they start?
Every day, there is no perfect time to challenge impunity. As long as there are things worth fighting for, as long as impunity still prevails, as long as the rights of citizens are still violated, as long as people are still being killed, still being murdered across the country, there is reason to protest. There is reason to. And let me make one last point. Some people are saying the ones Buhari must go, and we are seeing that language being criminalized. That in Dunamis Church, people were arrested for wearing a t-shirt. There is no law in Nigeria today that has criminalized calling for the president to leave office. It is not reasonable. It is not a criminal offense under any law. Because the president can leave office by resignation, yes. He can leave office by impeachment, he can leave office by resolution of the Federal Executive Council. He can leave office as a result of protests by citizens. So saying Buhari must go is not a criminal offense. It is an exercise, a fundamental right to freedom of expression. And that is why it is shameful that this is being criminalized by a regime that pretends to be progressive, by a regime that pretends to believe in democracy.
In your own view, what do you say should be the solution?
The solution, as I said, is that Nigerians must continue to stand up to this regime. And that is what some of us are trying to do in our little capacity. The only language that this regime understands is resistance. Because if we continue to make concession, they push us and we keep going backward, it will get to a point that we hit the wall. And that is what the regime has shown. Buhari only listens to those who resort to violence. And for me, that is very problematic, because when you come out to protest peacefully, you attack, you are assaulted. But the same regime is dialoguing with so-called bandits, encouraging dialogue with them. They claim they are running an integration program for Boko Haram, but those who are carrying placards are being shot and killed. So what they are saying is that if you come with placard, we will kill you. If you come looking for this, we will listen to you. That is not how to run a democracy. That is not how a government that believes in the rule of law should behave. And which is why I'm saying that citizens must continue to protest, citizens must continue to insist that this government must respect our rights. It's as simple as that.
I think that providing education, as stated in the Nigeria's Act on Free and Compulsory Basic Education of 2004, has made it compulsory for all governments in Nigeria to provide free and compulsory basic education for all Nigerian children, all in capital, regardless of what whatever discrimination, every Nigerian child has a right to basic education. Now, when we're discussing whether the Nigerian child is getting education, basic education, one, and two, whether he is not getting education, three, why is he not getting education when it is the prerogative, mandatory right that he should receive from his government? Now we ask questions where these problems are, and then we provide solutions that we think, in our opinion, that education is not made available qualitative for the Nigerian child because of the chaotic system the basic education has been run through. And we proposed a model that we believe, if it's being implemented, will ensure 100% delivery of basic education to all Nigerian children as enshrined and protected by the Nigerian law.
All right, beautiful. A lot of challenge was thrown to the government of Nigeria. A lot of people talk about the undemocratic behavior of the leaders and what have you. I want to know, what is your challenge to the government in regards to security and for education?
Let me tell you, the truth is that governments all over the world are only responsive to active citizens. When people are in power, their only reach that get them to do the right thing is the active citizenry that ask questions. That said, every government in Nigeria or anywhere in the world has a primary responsibility, which is protecting the lives and property of the citizens, followed by the privileges given to the citizens by the law. So we're even talking about challenging government to protect our lives, which is, we don't really have a government, because that is what defines that you have a government, right? You can leave, like you can go to bed, but the moment you cannot leave, you cannot go to bed, maybe you should begin to ask yourself if you really have a government, and what responsibility do you have now to make sure that this country has a working government for all the citizens.
But do you actually believe that Nigeria can actually work? Can we get there?
Yeah, there is no place I'm more optimistic that will succeed beyond Nigeria. Why? Because always, the bigger the challenge, the better the glory. The only component that is left for Nigeria to prosper and lead the world is the determined, capable leadership, which I believe my generation and the generations to come will provide, because citizens are getting tired and people are asking questions, and by the time we ask these questions in unison across the board in this country, you will see change will come to me. I'm saying that we should talk about criminals and criminality in terms of criminals and criminality, not in terms of ethnic groups or religious identities or regional affiliations. We are Nigerians. If you are Yoruba as an example, and someone says, okay, the Yoruba armed robbers, inadvertently he's included the best people the world have ever seen, like Wole Soyinka, for example, because he's Yoruba. So this is basically a very wrong stigmatization, or maybe stereotypical way of destroying a society. Because the moment you begin to view citizens in terms of we and the other, then you lend credence to politicians and manipulative forces to begin to develop hatred, lack of unison, and then people will stop fighting for the right causes, such as give us electricity, or give us water, or we need health, or we need schools. People will start fighting mundane things that don't exist. They'll be fighting on non-existent enemies, such as Fulani herdsmen. You're afraid to go to the north, or they'll kidnap me. Who told you so? Oh, I don't want to go to the east because Igbos are this and that. Oh, who told you that? Why don't you look at the 200 million people as Nigerians, and let us create this Nigerian identity that looks at our problems as part and parcel of a family problem and struggles. So I give you a simple example. If you have siblings, and your sibling insults you, will you treat him in the same way that you treat an outsider who you've never met and insulted your father? No. So we need at some point to sit and reflect. What country do we want to build? Who are the members of this country? And what are we learning? What do we know about these people we so love to hate? Say, okay, the Southern I hate Nova. But you ask him, have you been to the North before? No. Have you read about the North before? No. Have you known someone who lived from the North? No. Oh, I don't like your other people. You know, they are this and that. Ask him, have you been to Lagos? Why are you in the Yoruba land? No. Do you know them? No. Have you been there? No. What is the basis of the hatred? Hearsay. The stereotypes I say the Nigerian media is responsible for propagating, and we have to hold it responsible for reversing this monster that is eating our national unity, national cohesion, love and dignity that have, characterized the Nigerian nation from the birth to the recent days that these, new media houses are beginning to, destabilize.
There are gaps, definitely. There are gaps in report writing that we need to bridge with knowledge. The media has also helped the situation in so many other ways. But there are gaps in labels, in the use of labels, generalization that the media does need to correct. Because the media has the capacity to unite us as a people. The media has the capacity to put hope on the streets. The media also has the capacity to build fear and, create conflict. So yes, the media does need to work on its knowledge of issues and on its use of general terms. Having said that, the media is also at the forefront of ensuring that, so many issues that affect northern Nigeria is covered. The issue of poor education, the issue of forced child marriage, so many issues. So while the media has challenges that it must take care of, and they are important to take care of, there are also so many things that the media is doing right. And together as a country, we must learn to talk about these issues, not as people who are combating, but are people who are having a conversation, that can lead to the change that we want.
If you look at the social media these days, you'll discover there are lots of people or a lot of pages portraying themselves as a media organization. What do you think should be done?
Well, I believe that the people who understand what media is, who swore to the ethics of the media, who stand by the profession and who stand by being professional, must be more active in the space. The reason being that, social media is here and it has liberalized the use of your voice. And that is a good thing. It's a good thing that people do not need to wait 4 p.m. to listen to a national news or news at 7 p.m. At the same time, it has its bad side. So many people who are not competent to, pass information are in the space, and some of them have huge followership. And we're in a click-happy generation where, sometimes the number of clicks you have is interpreted as, giving credence to the information that you have given. So if you told a lie and you have 100,000 clicks, people get to believe that lie because a lot of people agree to it. So it's a populist era that we are in. But we as people who defend the profession, who are ethical, must be more active in that space and put things right, so that we're not chasing just after correcting lies, but we're telling our truth first. Because what happens is that sometimes the person who gets to give the first account is believed as the person who is the person giving the truthful account. So the media must be proactive on its activities on those digitally enabled platforms that we use for interaction. Well, if indeed we want to put an end to police brutality, we have to put an end to injustice generally. Because you see, we have to begin to see the links between the issues that affect us as a country. Now we have a history of 29 years of militarization as a country. When an average Nigerian catches a thief in the market, they do not have guns, they do not have the uniform, but somebody picks up a tire, somebody produces fuel, and that person can be burnt alive. That tells you about the psyche of many Nigerians because of our military experience. So to my mind, police brutality is wrong. But the things that we need to solve police brutality are not just within the police. They are in our system. They are in our educational system. They are in the way that we perceive things as Nigerians. They are in our governance, the injustice. You know, when you ask, I often talk about the way Nigeria has treated its police force. When you go to the barracks, they are the worst sights you can see. So when somebody lives in that condition, you know, and then you hand over your lives and guns to that person to protect you, you've missed it in the first instance. The policeman should be well taken care of. This is not justification of brutalization. Brutalization is wrong entirely. But if we must solve problems, we must get to the root of the problems. The root is not just the fact that the man picked up a gun. The root is that he lives in a 1 room or 2 room with a family of 4, and he earns, you know what amount, and his dignity has been stripped. The root is that we're a militarized people, and we need to work on that. Even in a democracy, look at the things that we're experiencing. We are being told that we should not protest, even in a democracy. So these are the roots of our problems that we must tackle to then be able to solve issues like police brutality, not just brutality, extrajudicial killing of Nigerians. It is real. As a media person, I've done a lot of media monitoring, and in our work as an organization, for instance, extrajudicial killing is one of the top 5 issues that we keep repeating every time in the media, and it is yet to be solved. So these issues are real, they are germane. The police must own up to responsibility. There are reforms that needs to be done, but these reforms go beyond the police. There are reforms we need to do as a people and as a polity.